Pretty big claim, no? Gintama is one of the most famous and critically acclaimed shonen series of all time, so what could possibly stack up to it? Well, maybe a series written by one of Hideaki Sorachi's former assistants. Yeah, that's right, we're talking about Which Watch, as in, which watch do I wear today? Because, your boy got that ice. This watch was like $40, actually. Witch Watch is a Shonen Jump manga series written and illustrated by Kenta Shinohara. You may recognize him from his previous work Sket Dance, which at the time was also called the next Gintama. Which is funny because now Witch Watch is also being called the next Sket Dance, and lo and behold, there's even a crossover arc between the two. But knowing all of its influences like that, you can probably guess what Witch Watch is like as a manga. It's a comedy, of course. A little less balls to the wall and a little more slice of life when compared to Gintama, but I can tell you right now, it's the same brand of comedy. Let me not get ahead of myself though. Here's a quick premise if you're unfamiliar with the manga. Witch Watch follows Nico Wakatsuki, a teenage witch who has come into town to live with her childhood friend Morihito Otogi, or Moi as she calls him. Now Moi isn't just some guy who looks like a BTS member, he actually comes from a family of ogres, and because of his ancestral history, he's been tasked with protecting Nico as her bodyguard. Hence Witch Watch, because he has to watch a witch. And now seeing him again after so many years all pubertied up and looking like a cast member from Singles Inferno causes her infatuation to blossom all over again. So while Moi tries to protect Nico from the evil warlocks who are after her for her magical ability, Nico makes sure we get our weekly dose of lovey-dovey shonen rom-com hijinks by trying to get the oblivious Moi to fall for her. Along the way, they meet a bunch of other magical buddies that move in with them, and there you have it. The perfect setup for joke after joke after joke after joke. It's pretty great, I'm not gonna lie. What better premise can you think of for a sitcom story than a bunch of magical teenagers living under one roof getting into some wacky shenanigans? Well, probably aliens invading Edo period Japan, but But that's really the strongest point of Witch Watch, the way it sets itself up so perfectly for endlessly repeatable comedic moments. You know why something like The Simpsons works and has worked for decades? It's because the settings and characters allow for infinite comedic possibilities. It's an average American family living in conditions a large part of the country can relate to, and all the characters are memorable with a definable quirk. At that point, the jokes just write themselves. Now take Witch Watch, where the element of magic is introduced, and you get, again, infinite possibilities for surreal and ridiculous comedy. It's all already there, it's too easy almost. But like I mentioned, the characters are really what sell a story like this. Every great comedy has to have that cast of characters who are so funny you don't even need to try to get humor out of them. For example, what makes SpongeBob funny is the fact that SpongeBob himself is already a funny character whose personality is well defined. So you can drop him into any scenario and the joke is already there because the audience is thinking, well, what would SpongeBob do if he had to paint a house full of priceless heirlooms? This is the comedic formula that series like Gintama and Sket Dance use as well, and obviously the tradition continues on with Witch Watch. So let's briefly get into some of those characters. We already talked about Nico and Moi, who I guess you could consider the male and female leads of the series. Moi is a stoic, no-nonsense, hyper-competent person who acts as like the father figure of the group, or mother figure. So you'd think he'd be like the straight man type, which he is, but Moi is hilarious in his own right, like the running gag of him being a denim otaku and boring everybody to death with his long-winded ramblings on how to properly wash jeans. He does contrast with Nico, however, who is the perfect foil for him. Nico is known as the Witch of Thousands because she can use a whole bunch of spells while most witches only specialize in a few. Basically, this means she's a very important chosen one type of character. You know how that whole thing goes. But Nico is also just a very genki airhead type who's always getting herself and the crew into wacky situations with her magic. Think Lala from To Love Ru. 90% of the comedy in that series comes from one of her inventions putting everybody in comedic situations that usually end with a titty popping out. In the same way, Nico's magical spells going awry make up most of the comedy in Witch Watch as well. Like the time Nico accidentally turns the gang into Minecraft characters. Yep. That's what you're in for if you read this series. But you can probably tell it's not just those two for the whole story, right? Other characters join in as Nico's familiars. There's Kanchi, or Kan, who was Nico's friend during her witch training days. He's a Tengu who's your standard goofball punching bag character. Think of one of the bros from a Persona game. He's kind of like that. He and Nico play off each other really well, like when they make a YouTube channel complete with Let's Plays, clickbait, and scripted apology videos. There's also Keigo, who is the brooding loner hipster of the crew. Emphasis on the word hipster, because that's where a lot of his comedy comes from. An early running gag in the manga is that Keigo also has a YouTube channel where he discusses obscure topics and claims that his low viewership is because people just don't get it. Sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Oh yeah, he also has an alternate personality where he turns into a Giga Chad named Wolf. Just average teenage puberty things, I guess. The last of Nico's familiars is a vampire named Miharu. Instead of sucking blood, he draws life energy from people, but because of that, he's had to seclude himself to avoid hurting anyone accidentally. His comedy usually stems from him being mischievous and borderline sadistic, which contrasts with his innocent, pretty boy looks. So that's the main crew, but you also have a whole bunch of other side characters, like Best Girl Nemu, who is a fellow witch that can shapeshift into a cat. Her full name is Nemu Miyao, by the way, because, you know, meow, cats. You also got Fran, a mad scientist chick who is obviously a parody of Dr. Frankenstein. You also got a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde parody in Rui Fujiki. There's the standard big titty Ara Ara Onesan in Momo. There's the student council, which is filled with parodies of stock shonen archetypes. And a whole bunch more. It's all really great. It's all really great. As you can see, just like how Gintama has its big cast of characters and side characters who bring their own brand of comedy, Witch Watch kind of follows in its footsteps. And you know, I hate to keep comparing two separate series, but let's be honest, Gintama is like the GOAT at this kind of comedy action format. So you know, it just makes a good point of reference, that's all it is. But look, now you might be saying, well Damian, that's nice and everything, but Gintama is also known for its serious arcs. Cause as a shonen fan, I can't read anything that goes more than 5 chapters without punching or energy blast. Well, lucky you, Witch Watch has its share of legit drama and action as well. Maybe not as much as Gintama, but hey, we're only like 100 or so chapters in. You see, remember that Moi, Kan, Keigo, and Miharu are not just Nico's homies and roommates, they're her bodyguards. And she definitely needs them because she's hunted by weird warlocks that look like this nightmare fuel thing. Cause I mean, look, part of what makes Gintama so great is that despite the ridiculousness of the comedy, the transition to action is seamless because of how well the characters are written. In the same way, Witch Watch builds your attachment to these characters through comedic slice of life moments, all the while reminding you that this looming prophecy of warlocks coming to attack Nico is just waiting to be fulfilled. So it's like a calm before the storm type thing. You're watching these goofy antics of them destroying their house while cooking dinner, and it's like, oh, this is nice, but we're only biding time until the prophesized danger comes to pass or whatever. And man, does it come to pass. We're kind of in the middle of the really big serious arc right now, but without saying too much, it's worth the build up of getting to know these characters for dozens of chapters. That's the real beauty of a series like Witch Watch. It's the kind of comedy I like because at the end of the day, it's not mean-spirited. Of course, the characters act like assholes sometimes and the comedy is out there and absurd, but everyone remains likable and easy to root for. It's hard to go from comedy to legitimate drama with stakes that you're supposed to take seriously when the characters you're supposed to like are a bunch of pricks who don't even like each other. So that's where a series like Witch Watch or Gintama or even Sket Dance succeed for me. They manage to have a real heart to them that allows you to take these series seriously without sacrificing the comedy. So yeah, in case you didn't get the message, Witch Watch is a very good manga. You should read it if you want. I don't know, it doesn't really matter to me. But what does matter to me is subscribing to this channel and liking the video because it makes me feel better about my multiple divorces when I see numbers go up on my YouTube analytics. Anyway, that's the video, peace. Oh, also there's surprisingly little to no fan service in this series. There are dirty jokes for sure, but none of those embarrassing like high school DxD jokes where it's like, oops, I fell and landed on your titties. Haha, that's the joke. Witch Watch is really a whole series where the comedy comes from it being genuinely clever and well written instead of relying on fat anime titties. Although there is Momo, but you know, it's not that bad, I promise.